Good morning, Sabal Khair. Oh, welcome, bringing the light into our morning. Day 2 of the very first WorldSkills Conference, shaping a skills strategy in a globalized world. I'm Lise Doucette. I was your moderator yesterday, and I'm your moderator again today. I think we had a very good day yesterday. What do you think? Very, very good. We started with a warning at the beginning of the day that in the midst of what we call the fourth industrial revolution, the world was now facing a global youth unemployment crisis. 71 million young people, according to the ILO, not in work, not in education, not in training. This is a conference with lots of acronyms, TVET, ACTET, but there's the other one called NEET, not in education, not in training, NEET, but it's not neat at all. And yet, throughout the day yesterday, while we had some really strong criticism of what needed to change in terms of what kind of TVET was being offered, the connectivity between educational institutions, a lot of talk between the mismatch between the world of work and the world of education. But I think we were also told that it shouldn't just be a time of doom and gloom, that the transition was underway. And we began the day with two magical words in the business that you all are involved in. One of them was imagination, and the other was innovation. Today we begin our session with another magical word, creativity, and the relationship between creativity and technology. A terrific way to begin day 2. And it is a day which has a lot of interesting. We're going to continue the discussions of yesterday. There's a VIP tour after lunch of the WorldSkills competition. I hope you're going to be going and visiting some of the bakers and the technicians and the aerospace people in all walks of the skills, of different skills, to see how they're competing and who's emerging as champions. And we'll have a 15:30 closing plenary again, where unfortunately you will no longer be the minister for the day. The ministers will come and sit in the big cushy chairs in the front. But now, no, please sit there right now. You are the minister for the day. You'll be the minister of education. It's the most important job here. But let's start with what's being described as a fireside chat. No need for a fire in the heat of Abu Dhabi, but fireside in the sense that it's going to be a conversation to bring you in. And your moderator for this session is Aidan Jones, who is the executive director of WorldSkills Abu Dhabi, and he has a very special guest, who is Badr Al-Ulama, who is the chairman of Strata Manufacturing. And if you don't know about Strata Manufacturing, you should, because it is about manufacturing for aerospace. So we begin the day by taking to the skies. And so think blue skies. And please welcome Aidan Jones and also Badr Al-Ulama, please. And they want you to join in.
Good morning, everybody. A fireside chat at this time in the morning. I hope we've got nice, bright and breezy people in the audience. Unfortunately, this morning we have missing one of our panelists because of some serious health injuries at home. So we are going to improvise a little bit. Mr. Badr and I will follow some topics of conversation, but we'll also seek participation from the audience. So anybody that wants to contribute a point or even expand the question or add an additional question, please feel free to do so. Do we have roving mics available? Is that okay? Okay. Wonderful, thank you. So by way of introduction, we know that this conference is very much thinking about and looking at how we match skill sets to future trends. And what we want to dig a little deeper with this morning is to look at how we have a relationship and the points that we raise between new technologies and creativity. How does that new technology impact on creative industries, and how does it support the creative process? What are the synergies and the tensions, and how do those relationships, or that relationship, contribute to the future skills and economies that we're looking to predict? And also, what we would think about or term a traditional skill set, how is that important in this context, and how should we look to see that develop? So my first point that I'd like to ask is, what do you think, Mr. Badar, are the main synergies and also the tensions between new technologies and the creative or the creativity?
Aidan, thank you for having me here. And I want to start off by probably thanking the organizers for hosting such a wonderful event. You know, I've been involved with you guys for some time, and I was waiting to see how this was all going to pan out. And I must say, I'm very impressed. The organizers have done a fantastic job. The second thing I also, before answering the question, is I want to make sure I don't do any disservice to Strata as well with respect to the introduction that was made by our lovely Master of Ceremonies. You're all wearing the lanyard with the Strata logo, and I'm hoping that it intrigued some of us to actually go over the website and see what Strata does. And it probably will link up to the answer of your question, because when we first started this investment in aircraft parts manufacturing, let me say the main sort of argument that was put forward towards us was, what kind of manufacturing does exist in the UAE? You guys are oil producers. You extract oil from the ground. There's very little manufacturing that needs to be done, with the exception of probably some refinery. But where is high-tech manufacturing actually being made possible in the UAE, so that we could understand if, or if not, can you make aircraft parts? Parts that could carry 500 people, 300 people, depending on the type of aircraft, safely from one part of the world to another. And it is in that perspective that we had a young workforce that are ready and willing to learn on the job, using creativity, using an open mindset, open eyes, no sort of barriers, no restrictions, asking questions about why not things, why do things have to be in a certain way, that have made the success story that Strata is today. And just to put it into context as well, we started off with a factory that was built in the middle of the desert in 2009. So we started off with groundbreaking. Within 10 months, we had a factory that was built. Within 2 months after that, so 1 year in total, we had the first parts actually made and shipped to our customer, Airbus. And today we have over 750 people. Half of them are UAE nationals. Out of all the UAE nationals that you would meet in the factory, 9 out of 10 are women. On the shop floor. I'm not talking about admin jobs. I'm not talking about air. This is people that are making parts with their own hands. And they're making those parts for Airbus and Boeing. Today we have commitments from Airbus and Boeing to the tune of $7.5 billion. So as long as we make parts from today all the way to 2030, we have customers. And that tells you a little bit about the success story that, again, I encourage everyone sitting in the audience to just Google or even visit the website to learn a little bit about Strata. So going back to your question again, Aidan, about creativity and specifically about how I see creativity playing a role in terms of maybe manufacturing, but maybe manufacturing of the future, because we talk about the fourth industrial revolution. And I've become a big champion about the fourth industrial revolution, the context of how is it going to make our world a different place? I'm speaking tomorrow at an event to do with insurance, and if you think about the traditional markets, the traditional manufacturing market or the traditional insurance market, things are going to change. Where you have somebody driving a car, tomorrow somebody, you have an autonomous car that's going to be driving people. The youth, the future employer, employee, customer, researcher, developer, is driving that change. It's not being driven by people such as myself or people that are older than me. It's being driven by the younger generation. And the younger generation does, I believe, does not see a specific degree, a specific outcome. They're looking at things across. They're cutting across how you would assume the manufacturing of a car, how you would be working with your phone and being able to get information on your phone to replace your, probably your watch, replace your ID card, replace your credit card, and it's being driven by the youth. Now, we have two choices. And I think this is where the US has done a very good job of actually listening to what the youth want and being able to translate that into daily environment. And what we can do is, again, we have to listen to what the youth want and be able to cater to that in our workplace, in our universities, at our homes, and even for entertainment and places of public amenities. So I do think that creativity is an essential part of our future lives, and it's being driven today by the youth of today.
I think that's an extremely pertinent point and probably resonates very well in this audience, given the success of the TVET Youth Forum that we've had in the previous days. And I myself have been struck very sharply in terms of an impact at the launch of the TVET Forum back in August, where we had engagement from the youth, young, active Emiratis from all over the UAE, and the passion with which they want to drive change. So I think that's something that will strike a chord with this audience. I was interested by your point about the factory that you spoke about, which I know well, of course. And you talked about the creativity around developing that. And I think it does sometimes surprise people, I think. So I would be curious to know, you spoke about the speed with which you developed that. What were the challenges you overcame? And also, presumably perceptions within society and families about going into that route. It would be new to many, many people and many families. What were the things you encountered and how did you overcome them?
I think that's a fantastic question. One of the biggest things that we probably encountered, and this is when I don't think it's unique to the UAE. This is probably something that you would find in any advanced or developed or even developing economy. It's the fact that you have to challenge the status quo, challenging traditional mindsets. And in the world of aerospace, you cannot get any more conservative than the world of aerospace in terms of how things are done, why things are done in a certain way. And the question that I always encourage, not just myself, but my team around me and the team on the shop floor, is to question why are things done in a certain specific way and can it done be better? Provided always that you do not go to a certain degree where you are actually going to be breaching the quality requirements of making those parts. So I do encourage the active, the curious mind to actually ask questions and be able to actually do things differently. Now, the challenge is, how do you balance what needs to be done and the speed at which it needs to be done and making sure that it's done in the right way the first time around with a curious mindset? Because curious mindsets bring innovation, curious mindsets bring creativity, and you don't want to inhibit that. But at the same time, you also want to get things done. So how do you make sure that two sort of driving forces within a working environment are able to communicate and accept each other's views? So on one hand, I cannot allow, let me say, a strong mindset that has been doing things in a specific way and that has achieved results. Obviously, anybody who we had employed from the aerospace world had a proven track record of getting things done. For 20 years, for 10 years, and it's consistent track record. So how do you encourage somebody who's known how to do things the right way first time around to be accepting a different viewpoint? And that was probably what was the unique thing about the environment that we had managed in Strata. What was your second question, Aidan, before
well, it leads me to
the
another
families?
point. Sorry?
The families.
Yeah, well, sorry, yes, you're right. The perception that this is new and it's different, it's perhaps something that people aren't familiar with. How did you persuade people to engage and accept it and become part of it? Because clearly that's happened and it's a great success story.
And the simple answer to that is to make sure that whatever you do, you have to drive passion into it. So the most exciting job in the world, the most exciting job, whether you are working for a place like Google or Amazon or anywhere else, if there is no passion involved in the job itself, so you cannot understand, what is the bigger picture here? What am I doing and how what I'm doing is so important, not just to the business, but to my society and to the country itself, and maybe to the world in terms of safety of passengers and safety of the aircraft. If you cannot communicate the importance of what you are doing on the shop floor, you will lose people. People won't be passionate. It will be seen a regular job. It's an 8-hour shift. I have to go to the workplace. I don't want to wake up in the morning. I want to leave early. The discipline is killing me. Those are real-life issues that you wouldn't just find in an aerospace factory, but you'd even find it in an office job. So driving passion into it, making people realize that the job that they're doing is so important. It's so important not just for them or for the business, but for the world. And it's being driven by the UAE. So driving that passion in, communicating it thoroughly all the time is a job that I take seriously when I was the Chief Executive Officer of the facility.
And certainly from my perspective, since I've been here, what I find is at a national level, there is a very strong vision of a future, which is obviously underpinning exactly what you're doing. You talked about establishing that facility in an industry that is very established in the way it does things, and using the creativity and the curious and the questioning minds to drive that. What about the future? What about predicting what might become the next thing? How do you develop that within your teams to have this future mindset?
That's a perfect question. That's a very good question as well. So what we have done in the UAE, and again, I just elaborate a little bit because I'm assuming that the audience is not very familiar with the Economic Vision 2030. We always put a target in mind and we work backwards. So we have a vision for where the country is going to go and the Emirate of Abu Dhabi is going to go in 2030, and we work it backwards to, at the time, 2008. Coming up with a strategy, formulating the strategy, identifying the business sector, taking that business sector, investing it on the ground, developing the workforce, making the business work, and then obviously putting a plan up to 2030. Same question going back to Aiden is we believe in the fourth industrial revolution, and we know that the fourth industrial revolution will not just change the way that the society works as a whole, but it will also change career paths, and it will change the skills that are required. So we're taking that and we're working it backwards, and we're saying, what is the factory of the future in aerospace? We know that the factory of the future exists in maybe tech, in IT, maybe in automotive to a certain degree with Tesla, but does it really exist in the aerospace world? And if we want to translate that and say that the aerospace world in Abu Dhabi, or driven from Abu Dhabi to the rest of the world, has to be envisioning or embodying or even embracing the fourth industrial revolution, which is going to look into the factory of the future, then let's start defining it today. And by defining it today, we know that we are going to be at the forefront, but we're also going to be competitive, relevant globally. So we have to always think of the end in mind and work backwards.
So you talk about defining it today and predicting and looking forward, but how's that in reality achieved with this workforce, with these passionate people? What are the things that are doing to do that? That's a really difficult thing to imagine. So I'd be really interested to know what are the things you've got in place.
So I like using the analogy of a proof of concept. The best people to actually drive the fourth industrial revolution are the people on the shop floor, the people that have the operational experience. They understand what are the difficulties, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities. It's not people that are sitting in administration, including myself, that are trying to figure out, yep, we have cloud, or we have artificial intelligence, or we have a 3D printer. And I always tell people this. I say, in the beginning, when people used to ask me, 3D printing will change the world. Better, what could 3D printing do for Strata? And I'm happy to admit that I had this generic answer. Yeah, 3D printing will change the world. It will change our business. How so? And I couldn't have an answer. But today, I'm proud to say that the operational team within Strata are actually using 3D printing, not just to make non-flyable parts in terms of tooling parts or even fasteners or even stuff to do with laser projectors, but more importantly, they have actually managed to make an interior part of an Etihad aircraft, of a Boeing 777. So they have taken that capability of 3D printing an aircraft part and put it inside an aircraft, and Ittihad Engineering has become the first airline in the world, MRO facility for an airline, that is able to certify 3D printed parts inside the aircraft. So it's a matter of actually not just saying stuff, but making those stuff or making that technology available to people on the shop floor to be able to do proof of concepts and prove that there is an opportunity here that we need to support.
And we've focused very much on what you're doing in your operation and all of the things that you're driving. What about the sector that supports you? What about the training? What about the standards and the frameworks? What do you see as being important that helps you to get to what you need to achieve, as indeed many other operations and organizations and companies will need? What would you say is working well? What would be wanting to be improved? What would be your view on that?
So I think, like any business, and especially when we talk about manufacturing or high-tech manufacturing, building an ecosystem is extremely important. And within that ecosystem, building the strong, formidable partnerships amongst each other is also important, and that's a responsibility that I do believe a management team would have. So building the relationship with suppliers, and suppliers that are not really based in this part of the world, they're based either in Europe or the US, or trying to find new suppliers in the eastern part of the world where the cost is cheaper, but also able to certify them and qualify them to supply parts that can go on an aircraft. That is a responsibility that we have. We have a responsibility to train the workforce. So it's okay for you to say that we offer an opportunity for employment, but giving people an opportunity to work without the necessary training to make them successful in doing the job correctly is also a responsibility that the business has. And then more importantly, also having a responsibility of building a relationship with the customer, understanding what is important to the customer and what is the customer looking for, and how you could use technology through the workforce to get what the customer wants. So that is a responsibility that management has now. Does the UAE have it today? I do believe that the UAE is at a good place at the moment. Can it be better? Absolutely, yes. We are getting there. You know, we are in terms of Strata. Again, I mentioned Strata just because I'm very familiar with it. It's a 6-year-old company. It's not been there long enough to be able to do all of this, which when you look at Europe and you look at the US or you look at other parts of the world, it's been doing this for over 50, 60, 70 years, ever since aircrafts have been built. So are we getting there? Yes. And are we getting there faster than anyone else? Absolutely, yes.
For me, it's a fascinating story. I'm always interested and intrigued to hear it. I'd like to just pause now because I think we've got some further things to say, but there may be an interest in the audience to contribute a point or add a question. Some of you, I'm sure, may be hearing this particular story of Strata and the wonderful developments there for the first time. Does anybody want to raise a point in the front here? Can we have a mic, please?
Good morning. Osman Yıldız from Turkey. How do you improve the skills of your staff in your company? Are you selecting them from outside? After selecting them, are you providing something for them to improve their skills? Very good question. Let me say, skills for me, there are two aspects. It's the competency level, which will go through a standard training program. So we have developed a training program in partnership with Lockheed Martin, and they will be trained on the skill set of layup, assembly, drilling, everything that they need to actually get into the shop floor and make an aircraft part. But more importantly for me was, I do believe that if you train anyone hard enough, long enough, that they will be competent most times in doing the job correctly. It's the, let me say, the softer skills that is very important. The discipline of knowing to be there before time and leaving after work finishes. To be able to do the job correctly, to be able to put the attention and the discipline of making sure that if we are late or we cannot be late in delivering a part to the customer. So we do both types of training. The more competent part, I mean, we go for a 10-month program with Lockheed Martin to actually, or in the past, I mean, we were doing the program with Lockheed Martin to do 10 months of training in the university on the vocational part, and then we brought them over for 12 months on the job training. After they complete 22 months, we offered them an employment opportunity.
Okay. Any other questions?
Hi, can everybody hear me? My name's Mel, I'm from the British Council, and thank you. That's across the 2 days, what we're continually hearing is about soft skills. I think we need to rename them, that they're not actually soft skills, they're core skills that employers want. We have a partnership project which we talked about with HSBC, so an industry partner, education partner, and a ministry partner that focus on, we've got TCADM there, that focuses on developing those actual skills that you're talking about, behaviours and attributes, but through technology. So it combines a medium where young people want to learn and engage, so online and face-to-face. But one of the struggles is understanding what do we mean by soft and core skills. And it would be great to understand how you as a major employer define those, because actually those are going to be the skills that actually keep young people on a career path as technology changes so much. So how do you define those core skills, and how do you communicate those to your education partners to embed those?
I see that we've expanded the terminology further around soft skills. I like the expression core skills very much. It's a new one to me, but I think we described them many, many different ways, and I think you touched upon them.
And I like the fact that you've called it core skills, because I really believe that, like I said, you can train somebody long enough and hard enough to be able to be competent in drilling or laying up a part or even assembling it, but it's the other element, the softer part, or let's say the core, what you refer as core skills, that is extremely important to make sure that what I think would differentiate between a very successful company and a not so successful company. And I tend to like to keep things very simplified. So to actually get that thing achieved internally, what we did is we went through an exercise of embedding a corporate culture that was based on values. And obviously it would start from the top, it would involve people in the middle, and it would bring in feedback from the bottom up to make sure that we could agree on a set of values that would represent not just the organization, but the individual. And I also remember when I was rolling out the values for the organization, obviously we had an acronym which was called PRIDE, and it was represented by passion, resilience, etc. But the main element was, if you could demonstrate those values, you should not be just demonstrating them at work, but even at home. So it becomes a part of your identity, and that identity that you take home and you bring to work is what makes you a much more successful person. So it's a matter of, again, simplifying it as opposed to being able to describe it, to say, let's try to find one word that would be able to describe it, that you'll always remember. You could split that one word into, let's say, 5 different types of values. How do you demonstrate those values? By giving specific examples. They could not necessarily be limited to those examples, but they give you an understanding of what you would do to represent or to reflect those values. And then if you are going to be living by those values, it shouldn't just be at work. You cannot have let me say, 2 identities, one at work and one at home. It should be a reflection of an identity of an individual that demonstrates those values at home and at work. And that's what we have seen, that, again, I do believe that we are one of the most successful aerospace companies in the world, not just in the UAE, because we have demonstrated it with Airbus and with Boeing through the commitments that they have given us.
Thank you. I think there was another question in the middle somewhere. There we are.
Hello, thank you for your passionate intervention. I'm Cristina Covacci, and I'm working in a multinational company in the electrical sector. And I'm to curiosity. If you are interested in international growth, I mean, from the Emirates to other countries and other possible companies, and regarding the main theme and issue of the next panels, the skills without borders. When you select or are facing with young people from other culture and other countries. How and in which skills are you interested, and if an internationalization of qualification would be a target for you? I mean, when you meet a young technician from, for example, Europe or United States, how you determine the skills you are interested in? And you have mentioned the internal training, and in my opinion, is the best way to know the young people. But have you also a specific look to the certificate skills of people from other world?
So you have two questions. The first question is on, in terms of our, let's say, international expansion. Strata, and I do say this, I would hope everyone in the audience would watch the space. Strata today is an Abu Dhabi-based UAE company. Strata will very soon become a global company. And it's important to take it from that context. We live in a globalized world. Businesses here, most businesses here are coming from abroad, and businesses that are actually established in the UAE should go abroad as well. We live in a globalized world, and Strata will become a global company very soon. And by being a global company, obviously it means a global footprint, a global presence, but also behaving like a global company, and obviously working with our customers and our suppliers in a global fashion to be globally competitive, but also having a global workforce. Today in Strata, we have over 30 nationalities. Over 30 nationalities. When we do determine, and this goes to your second question, when we do determine the type of skill sets that we're looking for, my opinion, the number one criterion, I go back to the softer skills, or in the terminology of core skills, is this person passionate enough, serious enough, and motivated enough to make a difference to the world? Everything else can be trained, in my opinion. Again, this is my simplified, my very naive probably answer. Everything else can be trained on. You can train a person to do anything if they are serious enough, motivated enough, and passionate enough to do it.
Okay. Any further questions in the audience?
We have one over here.
Good morning. First of all, I would like to congratulate our Arab brothers with this success that you gained in this world big supply chain, and you are doing very important job. You stressed out in your speech, as I understood, the part of your corporate culture, which is the strong discipline, coming in time, ending when you finished all your job, and this is all good. But I haven't introduced myself. I am from Azerbaijan, from Baku, from the government, Minister of Labor. But this very much, like my minister is telling, it's a bit archaism. Don't you think that nowadays, coming at 9 and ending, I don't know, 6, 7, it's a bit archaism. So people are wanting to have more flexibility, to have more time, maybe to work on a distance, like freelancers. So at some point, you will also probably automatize and robotize your business as any other production in the world. So do you think that in the future, as a next step, you can make a changes in this corporate culture that people can be more flexible?
So an interesting point there about what we were saying earlier about predicting future trends. Are the things that are being done by your employees things that become robotized, or
Automated.
are they going to be and what is the sort of flexibility you have within your working arrangements for your employees as well?
So it's a very good question, because obviously when I was chief executive of the business, I had proposals coming to me saying, could we introduce flex working hours? You know, maybe an hour late in the morning and an hour early in the evening, in the afternoon. And let me say this. I'm not an engineer, and I don't come from a science background. I actually come from a literature background, so I come from a legal background. And in my world, I'm quite flexible. But in the manufacturing world, if you miss one shipment with Airbus or Boeing, or if you have one quality issue, everything that we have built over time, especially in the earlier years of our development, will go down the drain. So we cannot afford to miss one delivery or have one quality issue with respect to the product that we serve our customers. So I do think that eventually, as you correctly alluded to, over time, when things become more automated and robotized, that this need will shift, it will change. But in the earlier years, especially when you are trying to demonstrate not just competency, but credibility, that you have to instigate and introduce discipline into the working environment. So what are we doing today with respect to the fourth industrial revolution and the fact that certain things are going to be automated and certain things are going to be robotized? Is we are trying to take the skill set and the foundation that has been created, and some of them are going to continue down the path of making aircraft parts, but some of them are going to be not changing, but upgrading their skill set into using machines and using robots and being able to understand software or coding or systems to take it to the next stage. But what is so unique about this is that they have a solid understanding of how to make an aircraft part, which I do believe you cannot buy. You cannot go to the market and say, I will find someone who knows how to use artificial intelligence to actually understand or apply it in the context of non-destructive testing. And they don't have an idea of how an aircraft part is made, or the fact that you might have air bubbles or you might have delamination. Only a person who has done it with their own hands will be able to understand the implication of using artificial intelligence for non-destructive testing. So at the moment, I think we are evolving ourselves from just being a startup to now being a serious player in the global scene with respect to making aircraft parts. And we are taking a select group of people and we are developing them to take them towards the next stage of using automation to make some parts that are not on the body of an aircraft, but inside the engine. And again, we have to be able to see that happening, work backwards, introduce it today, and get them ready for it when the time is right. So I hope I answered your question, but I can tell you for sure that I had maybe 10 different proposals about flexible working hours. And I could not see it working on the shop floor.
Thank you. Over here. Mike, please.
We were worried we won't get a lot of questions, but we see.
Yes, thank you. I'm Seija Malmäki-Kultanen from Finland. And I would like to comment on your discussion about the concept of creativity. What does it really mean? When we use the word creativity, so for most of people it means something which is extremely loose and enjoyable and even lazy. And somehow I think it is a misunderstanding. So your discussion was a good example of the different understandings of creativity, and I believe truly that it is different in different sectors. It's very close to the concept of problem solving. And let me bring here the Finnish example of the vocational qualifications, where we need to define in each sector, in each qualification, what creativity really means in the context. There might be areas where it can mean being very flexible, coming to the workplace when you feel like, or staying at home. But then there are areas where you need to be there at the site, together with your team, making it clear what's going to happen next. So thank you for your discussion, and I agree that there are sectors where you need to be very disciplined and creativity at the same time.
I want to point out that creativity as well happens with different functions, so qualifications or sectors. And I remember in probably my second or third year within the business, I obviously, some of the team, some of the workforce had challenges. And they would come to me and say, you know, we have a problem here, or we have a problem there, or this is an issue, or that is an issue. So I put an end to it, and I said, listen, once a week, we're going to have a session where I'm going to come, and the senior management, the senior operational team, and the finance team, and everyone else is going to be around me. You come and present the problem, but don't come to us with the problem. Come to us with a solution. And I can tell you that most of the solutions that came from the shop floor were things that people that with 30 years of experience could not solve. 30 years of experience in making aircraft parts could not solve or could not see coming through. And it was coming out from the shop floor, just based on a simple tweak of telling them, don't come to me with a problem, come to me with a solution. And I'm there, and the team is around me, and I will make an executive decision on the spot to make sure that we adopt it and we go ahead with it. So they were motivated to come to us with solutions. And again, like I said, creativity can come, with the guy who's serving you tea, could be with the guy on the shop floor, could be with management, could be with anyone, as long as you have an open mindset. And it's important to adopt an open mindset in a working environment that is very much disciplined and very much conservative.
Yes, that's the pedagogical leadership you are now demonstrating. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would also give a reflection. I think you make a really good point about the word creativity and its concept and how broad it is. And what I've learned this morning is, as I've taken notes here, is many, many examples from Badr about the creative approach that has been taken with this particular venture. And I think that's very inspiring to me, almost unable to capture them. There's so many examples, whether it's the one you've just given where you look for solutions linked to the problems, whether it's the example you gave around having a value set that you live at home as well as at work. It's a very, very creative approach to the whole venture, and I think that's an inspiring message for us all, or an inspiring story for us all.
Thank you.
Any other points or questions? In the middle here.
Hello. My name is Bright Jaja. I'm representing I Create Africa. I'm from Africa, Nigeria to be precise. I like the fact that, first of all, I want to congratulate you, sir, on your success. It's amazing what you guys are doing out here. But I'm going to talk from the youth perspective. And when it comes to creativity, a lot of things have been discussed here. Now, I wasn't part of the youth forum, but I came in once in a while to just check what they were doing. And one thing that I've noticed about this country is the fact that they put youth in front. The youth are the drivers of almost everything, and it's amazing. And that's one thing that we have not been able to capture in Africa. This is a global conference, so I'm going to talk more about Africa. One of the major problems we have is the fact that we've not been able to understand that our youth are important, and our youth can actually drive the message and actually drive the creativity and actually, create stuff. We still feel like we're not exposed enough, or we're not trained enough, and we don't have that opportunity to be trained. I come from a country that the system, starting from the educational system, has not been able to give us, mostly teach us what to think. They mostly teach us what to think, not how to think. So at the end of the day, we end up being robots, just doing things that we think is right, not thinking out of the box to create our own world. Now my question is, is there a program in place? Because as much as we don't have the infrastructure and we don't have the structure, we're not able to do as much as we're supposed to do. And one thing that Africa is blessed with is the fact that we have people that are very, very creative and very, very passionate. And that's one of the key things that you said. You can teach anybody anything if they have an open mind, if they're creative, and if they're passionate. Is there a system in place that can bring people from here over to Africa to pass this knowledge and this information that you're doing here? Or is there another system in place that can bring people from Africa to come and experience what you are doing here?
So I'm just thinking while you're talking about, what would be the one thing that I think would have made things different here? Because again, this education system is very similar. You're actually taught to memorize, and not all schools, but let me say during my generation, it was very similar. That you would memorize and you would go to class and you would have to remember what things were in the book so you can apply it on the exam. I think one thing that we have been blessed with in the UAE is an openness to business. This is the private sector driving this kind of behavior into the workforce and into society. This is not being driven by government. And with the private sector, again, very specifically, what is different is that it's always been done in the form of a partnership. To make sure, again, that when the private sector is coming from abroad to invest in this part of the world, that it's not being done only on the basis of cost or driving the lowest cost and maximizing the profit and extracting the value and going back home without doing something for society. So we have been blessed with a leadership a government leadership that has been very open to business, that has encouraged businesses to invest in this part of the world in partnership with local entities to make sure that the discipline of, again, investment is bringing some returns back to society. And then at the same time, trying to make sure as well that you're maximizing the returns for the business. I am a firm believer that the private sector, a good, socially responsible private sector can drive that change in any economy, provided let me say, the legal environment, the regulatory environment is conducive for it to actually do it. It's not constraining it, it's not putting restrictions on it, it's not obligating it that there is no money that can be sent abroad. You let the private sector do what it does best, and it's enhancing the performance of the workforce and maximizing value. But you also put some form of, let me say, a framework for it to work within to make sure that people are learning, the society is benefiting, and value is being created for the country as well as for the business, without too much hand-holding or too much, let me say, too much bureaucracy or too much involvement in the business.
And I think I would add something that I mentioned earlier. We have, for the first time at this WorldSkills event, the International TVET Youth Forum, 150 Emirati youth and 150 international youth working together. It's not just the 2 days they've been here, it's over a period of time, making those connections. It's a very energized group. I would be surprised, I don't know, but I would be very surprised if that initiative will come to an end and that is it. I think there will be a vision for that carrying on. And that connection, that ability for the sorts of things you recognize and want to see transferred into your own part of the world, that I think is one mechanism that is very, very valuable. So the International TVET Youth Forum has been a great initiative here in the UAE as well. Just one last question. We've got a couple of minutes, so just one last question at the front here, please. We're just running up to the wire now. Do we have a mic?
Okay, thank you. I am Khalid Asfar from Al Hussein Technical University in Jordan. And I stopped at one of your booths at this conference and had a long talk with your passionate engineers. And I noticed that, talking about creativity and innovation, I found that you were doing the testing of the composite sheets in an innovative way according to your engineers. Although I teach non-destructive testing, but that was quite an impressive thing. My question is, do you have an R&D section or department in your company? And do you have links with universities?
So the answer to the question is we do have an R&D function within Strata, but also within the aerospace portfolio. And our links are with 3 different institutions in Abu Dhabi, Khalifa University, Masdar Institute, and Petroleum Institute. Everything to do from the carbon fiber petrochemical part to the non-destructive or the process part, the systems part, and also even in the robotics and automation within Khalifa University, we have a center there. I'd like to just highlight as well that the people that you are meeting, the ladies, I'm assuming they were ladies that were on the stand, this is the first probably job they ever had in their life. They are mothers of 4 or 5 kids, and they have never done anything that was high-tech manufacturing, or they would never imagine that they would do high-tech manufacturing. But you can see that they're confident and they're able to answer questions independently of anyone being around them. And Aidan, we participated at the Farnborough Air Show last year when I was the CEO. And it was me, I was in London, I was in the UK. My CFO, my COO, my head of programs, my head of quality, my deputy CEO, and my head of engineering. All of us were in the UK. So the question is, who was running the factory? It was the people. Independently, no issues. Actually, less issues when we're not there than when we are there. So that was the funny part, that we had less issues coming to us, and they were running it, and they were making sure that every single part delivered on time to the quality without any intervention from management. And that's when you realize that you are now mature enough to go to the next level. And I'm very proud of what you saw at the stand, and hopefully many of you will have an opportunity to visit the factory in Al Ain, and you can see what we are very proud of. It's the people that are on the shop floor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you for your participation this morning. Thank you, Bala, for being with us, and I'm sure you'll agree that was a fascinating story and a fascinating discussion to have had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, creativity, curiosity, passion. Badr Arman tells us that if you have them, you have everything. You can train everyone. And as British Council reminded us, these are not just soft skills, but core skills. What an inspiring story. A story of a 6-year-old company, began with a factory in the desert, and now 6 years on, 50% of the staff are from the UAE, 9 out of 10 are women, and this Abu Dhabi company will become a global company. What are the secrets of success? Listen to the youth. And as all of you know, I know you went to bed last night with this on your bedside table, memorizing the principles. The youth declaration we heard yesterday, listening to what the youth want, and challenging the status quo, even in a very conservative society. I think you gave us a very, very good way to start the day, situating us in what we call the 4th Industrial Revolution, which of course is all about changing the world, but not in a way where it's just a slogan, but making it happen. Hashtag Think Future. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. And thank you to you, Aidan. Thank you for your good questions. Thank you.